The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the general store, and Isaiah Randall knew the moment he saw the driver's face that something was terribly wrong. Isaiah had been waiting 3 hours in the blistering heat of Monticello, Utah, his worn hat pulled low against the August sun of 1883. He had received the letter 2 months prior, carefully penned words from a woman named Prudence Foster who lived back east in Philadelphia. She had responded to his advertisement for a wife, and her letters had been thoughtful, intelligent, and kind. They had exchanged correspondence for half a year before she agreed to make the journey west to become his bride. Now, as the driver climbed down from his seat with unusual haste, Isaiah felt his stomach drop. The man's weathered face was drawn tight with concern. "You Isaiah Randall?" the driver asked, though he already knew the answer. They had spoken when Isaiah first arrived at the depot. "I am." "Where is she?" "Inside, but listen here, friend. The lady took sick somewhere past Denver. Started out as a cough, but by the time we hit the mountains, she had a fever that could boil water. She has been barely conscious for the last 2 days. I wanted to stop and get her to a doctor, but she kept insisting we push on to Monticello. Said you were waiting for her." Isaiah did not wait to hear more. He strode to the coach door and pulled it open, and his breath caught in his throat. The woman slumped against the seat was nothing like the image he had constructed in his mind from her letters. Her face was pale as fresh cream, except for the 2 bright spots of fever burning in her cheeks. Her dark hair, which she had described as chestnut brown in one of her letters, was plastered to her forehead with sweat. Her traveling dress, once a lovely shade of deep blue, was wrinkled and stained. "Miss Foster," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "Prudence." Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment gray eyes focused on him with surprising clarity. "Mr. Randall." Her voice was barely a whisper, rough and strained. "I am here. Let me help you." She tried to sit up straighter, tried to smooth her hair, and the gesture broke something in Isaiah's chest. Even burning with fever and weak as a newborn calf, she was trying to make herself presentable for him. "I apologize for my appearance," she managed before a cough racked her thin frame. "This was not how I imagined our first meeting." "Hush now," Isaiah said, reaching into the coach. "We will have time for proper introductions later. Right now, I need to get you somewhere you can rest." He lifted her from the coach, and alarm shot through him at how light she was. Had she been this thin when she started the journey, or had the illness stolen the weight from her? She made a small sound of protest, but lacked the strength to resist. Her head fell against his shoulder, and he could feel the heat radiating from her body even through his shirt. The driver was pulling down a small trunk and a carpet bag from the top of the coach. "This all her belongings?" "It appears so," Isaiah said. "Can you bring them to my ranch? It is 3 miles north along the creek road." "I can do that. You get her to Doc Brennan first, though. That fever is nothing to take lightly." Isaiah was already moving, his long strides eating up the dusty street. Monticello was not a large town, just a collection of buildings clustered where the mountains met the high desert valley. Doc Brennan's office was above the barber shop, and Isaiah took the stairs 2 at a time despite the precious burden in his arms. "Doc," he called, shouldering through the door. "Doc Brennan." The older man emerged from a back room, wiping his hands on a cloth. His eyes widened when he saw Prudence. "What happened?" She came in on the stage. "Took sick on the journey. The driver said she has been fevered for 2 days. Doc Brennan gestured to an examination table. "Put her here. Gently now." Isaiah laid Prudence down as carefully as if she were made of spun glass. Her eyes had closed again, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. The doctor immediately began his examination, checking her pulse, listening to her chest, peeling back her eyelids to look at her pupils. "Pneumonia," Doc Brennan said after a few minutes. "She has fluid in her lungs." "How long was she traveling?" "Near 3 weeks, I reckon, all the way from Philadelphia." The doctor shook his head. "Closed coach, probably caught a chill that turned into something worse, and then the stress of the journey weakened her further. She is in a bad way, Isaiah. I will be honest with you about that. But she will recover." Isaiah heard the desperation in his own voice and did not care. "That depends on a lot of things. She needs rest, fluids, and careful nursing. Her fever needs to come down, and we need to help her lungs clear. The next few days will tell us which way this goes." Isaiah looked down at the woman he had never met, but had come to know through months of letters. In those letters, she had told him about her love of reading, her skill at gardening, her hope for a new life in the West. She had been honest about her circumstances, explaining that her parents had died within a year of each other, leaving her alone and with few prospects in Philadelphia. She had not been destitute, but as an unmarried woman of 22 with no family, her options were limited. His advertisement had offered her hope, and his letters had promised her a home. "Tell me what to do," Isaiah said. "Tell me how to take care of her." Doc Brennan raised an eyebrow. "You are taking her home with you. She came here to be my wife. Where else would she go?" "Isaiah, you barely know this woman. She might be laid up for weeks. That is a lot to take on." "I know what I am taking on, Doc. Just tell me what she needs." The doctor studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but you are going to need help. You cannot run your ranch and nurse her day and night." "I will figure it out." For the next hour, Doc Brennan gave Isaiah careful instructions. He provided packets of herbs for tea that would help with the cough and fever, explained how to create steam to help her breathe, demonstrated how to check for signs that the pneumonia was worsening. He gave Isaiah bottles of willow bark tincture and a jar of mentholated salve to rub on her chest and back. "Change her clothes for something loose and comfortable," the doctor said. "Keep her cool when the fever spikes, but make sure she stays warm otherwise. Get fluids in her whenever she is conscious enough to swallow. Broth is best, or water with a little honey. And watch her close. If she starts turning blue around the lips or if her breathing gets much worse, you come get me immediately, understand?" Isaiah nodded, committing every word to memory. By the time he carried Prudence out to his wagon, the sun was starting its descent toward the western mountains. He had arranged blankets in the wagon bed to cushion her from the rough road, and he drove with excruciating care, avoiding every rut and rock he could manage. His ranch was modest by any standard. The house was small, just 3 rooms he had built himself from logs and stone. The barn was in better shape than the house, and his workshop was nothing more than a lean-to attached to the barn. He ran cattle on the open range and broke horses to sell, making enough to live on but not much more. It was a hard, lonely life, which was why he had placed the advertisement for a wife in the first place. He carried Prudence into the house and laid her on his own bed. It was the only bed, and he would make do with blankets on the floor. The room was small but clean, with a window that looked out over the creek and the mountains beyond. He had spent the last week scrubbing and organizing, wanting everything to be perfect for her arrival. None of that mattered now. Isaiah heated water on the stove and brought it back to the bedroom along with clean cloths. Prudence's fever had climbed higher, and she was muttering incoherently. He sat on the edge of the bed, uncertain how to proceed with the next necessary step. The doctor had said to change her into something more comfortable, but she was unconscious, and he was acutely aware that she was a woman he had never met in person. He settled for removing her shoes and stockings, then carefully loosening the tight bodice of her traveling dress. He managed to work the dress off her without too much difficulty, leaving her in her chemise and petticoat. That would have to be enough. He covered her with a light sheet and began bathing her face and arms with cool water. "You are going to be all right," he told her, not sure if she could hear him. "I know this is not how either of us planned this, but you are here now, and I am going to take care of you." Her only response was another rattling cough that made him wince. The night was long and difficult. Prudence's fever climbed until she was burning to the touch, and Isaiah kept up a steady rotation of cool cloths on her forehead, neck, and wrists. Around midnight, she became agitated, pushing at the blankets and crying out. He had to hold her hands gently to keep her from hurting herself. "Mama," she whimpered at one point. "Mama, where are you?" "SHH," Isaiah soothed, stroking her hair back from her face. "Rest easy, you are safe." Near dawn, she woke more fully, her eyes opening with something approaching awareness. "Water," she rasped. Isaiah had a cup ready. He slipped his arm behind her shoulders and lifted her carefully, bringing the cup to her lips. She managed a few sips before falling back against the pillows, exhausted from even that small effort. "Where am I?" she asked. "My ranch. My home. You are safe here." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Even through the haze of fever, he could see her taking in his face, his dark hair that fell a bit too long, the stubble on his jaw because he had not taken time to shave that morning, the lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the sun. "You are taller than I imagined," she said, and there was the ghost of a smile on her cracked lips. "And you are sicker than I hoped," he replied, "but we are going to fix that." "I am sorry," she whispered. "This is not fair to you. Life is not often fair. But you are here now, and that is what matters. Rest, Prudence. Just rest." Her eyes closed again, but this time she seemed to slip into a more natural sleep. Isaiah sat back in his chair, rolling his shoulders to ease the stiffness. He allowed himself a moment to study her properly. Even ravaged by illness, he could see that she was lovely. Fine features, a determined chin, long lashes that rested against her flushed cheeks. Her hands, lying slack on the blanket, were small but showed signs of work. Not the soft hands of a lady of leisure, but capable hands. He thought of her letters, the neat handwriting, the way she had shared pieces of herself carefully but honestly. She had told him she could cook and sew, that she had helped her mother run their household before the older woman's death. She had confessed that she loved stories and poetry, but had never had much opportunity for formal education. She had asked thoughtful questions about his life, about the land, about what she could expect in Utah. He had been drawn to her thoughtfulness, her quiet strength that came through even in written words. Now, seeing her like this, sick and vulnerable, but having insisted on continuing her journey to reach him, he felt that strength even more keenly. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of worry and exhaustion. Isaiah barely left Prudence's side except to tend to the most urgent needs of his animals. His neighbor, Thomas Garrett, came by on the second day and found Isaiah red-eyed and haggard. "Good Lord, man," Thomas said. "You look worse than death." "She is not improving," Isaiah admitted. "The fever comes down a little, then spikes again. She can barely keep anything down." Thomas, a gruff man in his 50s who ran the neighboring spread, surprised Isaiah by rolling up his sleeves. "My wife nursed me through pneumonia 10 years ago. Let me see what I can do." Between the two of them, they managed to get Prudence sitting up enough to breathe more easily. Thomas showed Isaiah how to thump on her back in a specific pattern that helped loosen the congestion in her lungs. It was brutal to watch her cough so hard, but afterward she could breathe a little easier. "Keep at it every few hours," Thomas said. "And for God's sake, get some sleep yourself. You will be no good to her if you collapse." Isaiah tried to follow that advice, but sleep was difficult. He dozed in the chair beside the bed, waking at every sound Prudence made. On the fourth night, her fever broke properly for the first time. He woke to find her looking at him in the lamplight, her eyes clear and focused. "You have been here the whole time, haven't you?" she asked. Her voice was still hoarse but stronger than it had been. Isaiah sat up, wincing as his back protested. "Where else would I be? I have been a terrible burden. We were supposed to be married by now. Instead, you have been playing nursemaid to a stranger." "You are not a stranger," he said quietly. "I have been reading your letters for 6 months. I know that you prefer tea to coffee, that you miss the ocean even though Philadelphia is not really a coastal city, that you worry about being a disappointment. I know that you loved your parents deeply, and that losing them both nearly broke you. I know that you are braver than you think you are because you got on that stagecoach and traveled 2,000 miles to start a new life with a man you had never met. So no, Prudence, you are not a stranger." Tears welled in her eyes and spilled down her cheeks. "I wanted to make a good impression. I wanted you to see me and think you had made the right choice." Isaiah reached out and carefully took her hand. It was the first time he had held her hand when she was truly conscious, and he felt the rightness of it settle into his bones. "I already know I made the right choice. You are here. You fought to get here even when you were sick enough that most people would have given up. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." She turned her hand in his, lacing their fingers together. "You are a good man, Isaiah Randall, better than I dared hope for. Rest now," he said softly. "There will be time for everything else later." She fell asleep still holding his hand, and Isaiah sat there in the lamplight, feeling something shift in his chest. He had expected many things when he had placed that advertisement. He had hoped for companionship, for someone to share his life and his home. He had thought perhaps affection might grow with time. He had not expected this fierce protectiveness, this need to keep her safe and help her heal. He had not expected to feel like his entire world had narrowed down to this small room and this fragile woman. As the days passed, Prudence grew steadily stronger. The fever still returned in the evenings, but not as high as before. She was able to eat small amounts of broth and bread soaked soft. Isaiah helped her sit up for longer periods, propping her with pillows so she could look out the window at the mountains. "It is beautiful here," she said one morning, her voice still carrying a rasp but much improved. "So different from Philadelphia. Do you miss it?" Isaiah asked. He was shaving at the small mirror on the wall, having finally taken time to make himself presentable. "I miss what it was," she said carefully. "When my parents were alive, when I had a home and a place, but that Philadelphia is gone. This is where I am meant to be now." He caught her eye in the mirror. "You sound certain." "I am." She plucked at the blanket. "Isaiah, we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "I mean that we were supposed to be married by now. You were expecting a wife, not an invalid. I would understand if you wanted to wait, to give us both more time to know each other properly before we make such a commitment." Isaiah set down his razor and turned to face her fully. "Is that what you want? More time?" "I want to be fair to you. Prudence, look at me." He waited until her gray eyes met his. "I have spent the last week and a half taking care of you. I have seen you at your weakest, most vulnerable. I have held your hair back while you were sick, and I have sat with you through the worst of your fevers. I have learned that you talk in your sleep about gardens and books, that you are stubborn about taking medicine, and that even when you are barely conscious, you try to be polite and proper. If anything, I know you better now than I would have if you had arrived healthy and we had courted for months." "That is hardly a romantic courtship," she said, but there was a hint of humor in her voice. "Maybe not. But it is honest, and I would like to keep being honest with you. The truth is I was lonely. That is why I placed the advertisement. I have been alone on this ranch for 3 years, and I was tired of talking to my horse and my cattle. I wanted someone to share my life with. But this last week, taking care of you, making sure you were comfortable and safe, it gave me something I did not know I was missing. What is that? Purpose, he said simply. I have been going through the motions for a long time, working the ranch, selling horses, just existing. But taking care of you, that felt important. It felt like it mattered. Prudence's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I felt so lost after my parents died. Like I was drifting without an anchor. Your letters gave me something to hold on to, a future to imagine. And now, being here, even sick as I have been, I feel like I have found solid ground again. Then we are both exactly where we need to be, Isaiah said. There is something else we should discuss, Prudence said, color rising in her cheeks. The sleeping arrangements. You have been sleeping in a chair or on the floor. That cannot continue. Your back must be aching terribly. Isaiah felt his own face heat. I will manage. You need the bed to recover. Isaiah, this is your home, your bed. And soon, if we go through with the marriage, it will be our bed. Perhaps we should start as we mean to go on. He stared at her, trying to parse what she was suggesting. Prudence, you are still recovering. I would not want you to think I expected anything inappropriate. She actually laughed, though it turned into a small cough. I am not suggesting anything inappropriate. I am suggesting that we are both adults who are planning to marry, and that it is foolish for you to destroy your back sleeping on the floor when this is a perfectly adequate bed for two people to sleep with perfect propriety. Isaiah could not help but smile at her practical tone. You make a good argument. I was told I can be quite persuasive when I set my mind to it. That night, after making sure Prudence was comfortable and had everything she needed, Isaiah lay down on the far side of the bed, keeping a careful distance between them. It felt strange and intimate and absolutely right all at once. Isaiah, Prudence's voice came soft in the darkness. Yes, thank you for everything, for not turning me away when I arrived sick, for taking care of me, for making me feel like I matter. You do matter, he said. You matter a great deal. He heard her breath hitch, and then he felt her hand fumble for his in the darkness. He took it, giving her fingers a gentle squeeze. Sleep well, Prudence. Sleep well, Isaiah. 2 weeks after Prudence's arrival, she was well enough to be up and around the house for short periods. She tired easily and still had a persistent cough, but the worst had passed. Doc Brennan came out to check on her and declared himself satisfied with her progress. You gave us a scare, young lady, he told her, but you are stronger than you look. I had good care, Prudence said, smiling at Isaiah. The doctor looked between them with knowing eyes. I would say so. Isaiah, you did well. Not many men would have taken on what you did. After the doctor left, Prudence insisted on helping prepare supper. Isaiah tried to protest, but she waved him off. I have been lying in bed for 2 weeks. I need to do something useful or I will go mad. Besides, I want to prove to you that I can actually cook, as I claimed in my letters. I never doubted you. Still, a demonstration seems in order. She was not as strong as she pretended, and Isaiah watched her carefully for signs of fatigue. But she moved around the small kitchen with growing confidence, examining his supplies and equipment. His kitchen was serviceable but basic, the domain of a man who cooked only because he had to. You have any chickens? She asked. 3 hens. They are not the most productive, but they give me eggs most days. I could work with that. And I saw you have a decent vegetable patch, though it needs some attention. I know enough to keep from starving, but gardening has never been my strong suit. Prudence smiled. It is one of mine. My mother and I always kept a large garden. It will need to wait until I am stronger, but I have plans for that patch. Isaiah leaned against the doorframe, watching her. She was wearing one of his shirts over her chemise and petticoat. her own dresses still being too fine for everyday work. Her hair was braided simply down her back, and her feet were bare. She looked nothing like the proper Philadelphia lady he had imagined, and she was more beautiful than anything he could have dreamed. "What are you thinking?" she asked, catching him staring. "That you look like you belong here." Her smile could have lit the whole territory. "I feel like I do." That evening they sat together on the porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. The August heat was finally breaking, and there was a hint of autumn in the air. "Isaiah," Prudence said carefully, "I have been thinking about our situation." "What about it?" "We should get married soon. Properly, I mean. I know we have been living here together, but it has been under unusual circumstances. I do not want people in town to get the wrong idea about either of us." "I have been thinking the same thing," Isaiah admitted. "Would you be comfortable with that, getting married when you are still recovering?" "I am well enough for a simple ceremony. And honestly, I would like to be your wife in truth, not just in name. I want this to be real." Isaiah reached over and took her hand. It had become natural over the past weeks, this simple gesture of connection. "It already feels real to me as well, but I would like it to be official." They rode into Monticello 3 days later, Prudence seated beside Isaiah on the wagon bench. She wore her best dress, carefully cleaned and pressed, and she had pinned up her hair. Isaiah had shaved and put on his good shirt. It was not a grand affair, but there was a sense of occasion to it nonetheless. The ceremony took place in the small church, with Pastor Williams officiating. Thomas Garrett and his wife Martha stood as witnesses. The service was brief and simple, traditional vows spoken clearly. When Isaiah slipped the simple gold band onto Prudence's finger, his hand was steady. When he kissed her for the first time, her lips were soft and warm, and he felt her smile against his mouth. "Mrs. Randall," he murmured. "Mr. Randall," she replied, her eyes shining. They had a small celebration at the Garrett Ranch afterward. Martha had prepared food, and several other neighbors came to offer their congratulations. Prudence was overwhelmed by the welcome, having expected to be an outsider in this small community. "We take care of our own here," Martha told her, "and you are one of us now." By the time they returned to their ranch, the sun was setting again. Isaiah helped Prudence down from the wagon, but instead of releasing her, he swept her up in his arms. "What are you doing?" she asked, laughing, "carrying my bride across the threshold as is proper." "I have already been inside the house." "That was when you were sick. This is different. This is us starting our life together as husband and wife." He carried her inside and set her down gently in the main room. The house was quiet around them, intimate in the lamplight. Prudence looked up at him, her expression open and trusting. "I know we have shared a bed out of practicality," she said softly. "But this is different, as you said. I want you to know that I am ready for this, for all of it, for truly being your wife." Isaiah cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheekbones. "Are you sure? You are still recovering, and I do not want to rush you, I am sure. I have never been more sure of anything." He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, trying to pour everything he felt into that kiss. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. "I never expected this," he said. "When I placed that advertisement, I was hoping for compatibility, maybe companionship. I was not expecting to feel like this." "Like what?" "Like I would do anything to make you happy. Like you are the most important thing in my world. Like I am falling in love with you more with every passing day." Prudence's breath caught. "Isaiah, I am already in love with you. I think I started falling when I read your first letter and saw your honesty. And then you took care of me when I was at my worst, and you never made me feel like a burden. You made me feel cherished. How could I not love you?" He kissed her again, and this time there was more heat behind it, more urgency. When he lifted her and carried her to the bedroom, She wrapped her arms around his neck and buried her face against his shoulder. That night, they became husband and wife in truth, learning each other with gentle touches and whispered endearments. Isaiah was careful with her, mindful of her still recovering strength, but Prudence met him with surprising passion. Afterward they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "No regrets?" he asked. "None. You, not a single one." "You are everything I could have wanted, Prudence." "I feel the same way. Here with you, this is home. This is where I am meant to be." The autumn passed in a blur of work and growing intimacy. Prudence regained her strength fully and threw herself into making the ranch house a true home. She sewed curtains for the windows, planted bulbs that would bloom in the spring, and reorganized the kitchen to suit her needs. She took over the cooking, and Isaiah discovered that she had not exaggerated her skills. She could make a simple stew taste like a feast. She also proved to have a natural way with animals. The chickens, which had been skittish with Isaiah, seemed to adore her. She started spending time with his horses, and he came back from working the range one day to find her in the corral with his wildest Mustang, crooning to it while it ate an apple from her hand. "How did you do that?" he asked in amazement. "That horse has tried to kick me twice this week." "You just have to show them you are not afraid," she said, "and that you have treats." Isaiah laughed and pulled her close, not caring that they were both dusty and sweaty from the day's work. "You never stop surprising me." "Good. I would hate to be predictable." Winter came early to the high desert of Utah, and with it came challenges. The cattle needed to be brought closer to the ranch, and Isaiah spent long days in the cold making sure they had access to water and whatever forage could be found. Prudence kept the home fires burning, always had hot food ready when he came in half frozen, and warmed him in bed at night with her body curled against his. On Christmas Eve, a blizzard rolled in from the north, dumping 2 feet of snow and driving the temperature well below zero. Isaiah and Prudence were snowed in for 3 days, but neither minded. They spent the time talking, reading aloud to each other, and making love by the warmth of the fire. Isaiah taught her to play poker, and she beat him soundly 3 times in a row. "I think you hustled me," he said, watching her gather up the matchsticks they were using as chips. "I have no idea what you mean. I am just a simple girl from Philadelphia who happens to be good at cards." "Simple," she says. "Woman, you are about as simple as a mathematical equation." She laughed, and the sound filled the small house with warmth and light. On Christmas morning, Isaiah gave her a music box he had ordered from Denver months before. It played a delicate waltz, and when he opened it, Prudence's eyes filled with tears. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "How did you know? You mentioned in one of your letters that your mother had a music box you loved. I know this cannot replace that, but I wanted you to have one of your own." She threw her arms around him, kissing him fiercely. "I love it. I love you. You are the best husband I could have imagined." "I have something for you too," she said, pulling back. She went to her trunk, which still sat in the corner of their bedroom, and pulled out a package wrapped in brown paper. "It is not much, but I made it myself." Inside was a shirt, beautifully made from soft fabric she must have brought with her from Philadelphia. The stitching was perfect, tiny and even, and she had embroidered his initials on the cuff in dark thread. "Prudence, this is incredible. When did you make this?" "In the evenings while you were raiding. I wanted to give you something meaningful, something that showed I was thinking of you." Isaiah pulled the shirt on immediately, and it fit perfectly. "I am never taking this off. You will have to, or it will get filthy." "Fine, but I am wearing it every Sunday." The blizzard finally broke on the 3rd day, and Isaiah had to dig a path from the house to the barn. The cattle had weathered the storm well enough, huddled together in a sheltered draw. When he returned to the house, Prudence had hot coffee and breakfast waiting. "I have been thinking," she said as they ate, "about the future." "What about it?" "I want this place to succeed, Isaiah. I want us to build something real here, something we can be proud of. I have some ideas about how we could expand, how we could make the ranch more profitable." Isaiah set down his coffee cup, intrigued. "I am listening." "Right now, you are running cattle and breaking horses. That is good, but it is unpredictable income. What if we diversified? We could expand the chicken flock, maybe sell eggs and birds in town. I could plant a much larger garden in the spring and preserve the extra to sell. And I was thinking about goats. Goats, for milk and cheese. There is a market for good cheese, and goats are hardy. They would do well here." Isaiah considered this. "You have clearly been thinking about this a lot. I want to contribute, to be a true partner. I know I cannot do the heavy ranch work, but I can do this. I can help us build a better life." He reached across the table and took her hand. "You are already a true partner, Prudence, but I love these ideas. Let us do it. In the spring, we will start making changes." "Really, really. We are in this together, building our future. I want to hear all your ideas." Her smile was radiant, and she launched into a detailed explanation of her plans. Isaiah listened, marveling at her mind, at the way she had already figured out the logistics and economics of everything she was proposing. This woman who had arrived sick and weak, who he had nursed back to health, was strong and capable and brilliant. He had found his partner, his match, and his purpose all in one person. Spring came late but glorious to the mountains. The snow melted into rushing creeks, and wildflowers carpeted the meadows. Prudence threw herself into her projects with infectious enthusiasm. They bought 6 goats from a rancher down in Blanding, and Prudence learned to milk them and make simple cheese. The chickens multiplied, and soon they had 24 hens providing eggs. The garden expanded to 3 times its previous size, and Prudence spent her mornings tending it with obvious joy. "You have dirt on your nose," Isaiah told her one afternoon, finding her on her hands and knees between the rows of vegetables. She swiped at her face, smearing more dirt. "Do I? Here, let me." He knelt beside her and gently wiped her face clean with his bandana. "Better. Thank you. Come look at this. The potatoes are doing wonderfully, and the beans are already flowering." He let her pull him through the garden, listening to her excitedly point out each successful crop. Her face was tanned from the sun, her hands rough with work, and she had never looked more beautiful. "You are happy," he said. "It was not a question. I am happier than I have ever been. Is that strange? I thought I had a good life in Philadelphia, but it was nothing compared to this. Here I feel like I have a purpose, like I am building something that matters. You are, we are, together." That night, as they lay in bed, Prudence rested her head on his chest. "Isaiah, can I ask you something? Anything? What made you place that advertisement? What made you decide you wanted a wife?" Isaiah was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to put it into words. "I inherited this ranch from my uncle 5 years ago. He never married, never had children. He was a good man, but a lonely one. When I came here to work for him, I saw that loneliness. And after he died and left me the place, I felt it myself. I would go days without talking to another person. I started to understand why my uncle had been the way he was, and I realized I did not want to end up like that. I wanted someone to share this life with, someone to talk to at the end of the day, someone to build a future with. But why a mail-order bride? Why not court someone local? There are not many unmarried women in Monticello, and the few there are did not seem interested in a life like this. It is hard out here, isolated. I thought maybe someone from back east, someone looking for a new start, might be willing to take a chance on a cowboy and his small ranch." Prudence propped herself up on her elbow to look at him. I am so glad you did. I was drowning in Philadelphia, Isaiah. After my parents died, I tried to keep going, tried to find some way to make a life for myself. But everything felt hollow. And then I saw your advertisement and something in me just knew. I knew I was supposed to answer it. Fate, Isaiah said. Maybe. Or maybe just two lonely people finding each other across a continent. Either way, I am grateful. So am I, every day, Prudence. Every single day. Summer brought its own challenges and joys. The heat was intense in the high desert, but the mornings and evenings were cool enough to work. Isaiah's cattle herd had grown, and he spent long days riding the range. Prudence managed the homestead with impressive efficiency. Her cheese was becoming popular in town, and she was selling eggs and vegetables to several families in Monticello. On a hot July afternoon, Isaiah returned from checking fence lines to find Prudence standing in the garden looking pale and shaky. He was off his horse in an instant, taking her arm. "What is wrong? Are you feeling ill?" "No, I do not think so. I just felt dizzy all of a sudden." "Come inside. Sit down. Have you been drinking enough water?" He guided her to a chair in the kitchen and brought her a dipper of cool water from the bucket. She sipped it slowly, color gradually returning to her face. "I am fine, really. I think I just stood up too fast." "Have you been feeling dizzy other times?" She hesitated. "A few times over the past week, and I have been tired more than usual, but it is probably just the heat." Isaiah frowned. "Maybe Doc Brennan should take a look at you." "Isaiah, I am fine. I do not need the doctor for a little dizziness. Prudence, after what you went through when you first arrived, I am not taking chances with your health. Please, for me." She reached up and touched his cheek. "You worry too much." "I worry the right amount. You are precious to me, Prudence. I cannot lose you." Her expression softened. "All right. If it will make you feel better, we can go see the doctor." They rode into town the next morning. Doc Brennan was in his office and he greeted them warmly. "Isaiah, Prudence." "What brings you in?" "Prudence has been having dizzy spells," Isaiah said, "and unusual fatigue." The doctor's eyebrows rose. "Is that so? Come into the examining room, Prudence. Let us take a look." Isaiah waited in the outer office, pacing like a caged animal. It felt like hours before the door opened again, though it could not have been more than 20 minutes. Prudence emerged with a strange expression on her face, something between stunned and elated. "What is it?" Isaiah demanded. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Doc Brennan said, and he was smiling. "Congratulations, Isaiah. You are going to be a father." Isaiah felt the world tilt. "A father," Prudence moved to him, taking his hands. "We are having a baby. I am pregnant." For a moment, Isaiah could not speak. He looked at Prudence, at her shining eyes and tremulous smile, and felt joy crash over him like a wave. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "A baby," he breathed. "We are having a baby." "Are you happy?" she asked, her voice muffled against his chest. "Happy." "Prudence, I am beyond happy. I am completely overwhelmed and terrified and more excited than I have ever been in my life." She laughed, and he felt her tears soaking into his shirt. "I feel the same way." Doc Brennan cleared his throat. "Prudence appears to be about 2 months along, which would put the baby arriving around late February or early March. Given what she went through with the pneumonia, we will want to be extra careful during the pregnancy. Make sure she is eating well, getting rest, not overworking herself." "I will take care of her," Isaiah promised. "Whatever she needs." "I know you will. You proved that already. Now go home and celebrate. This is wonderful news." The ride back to the ranch was quiet, both of them lost in their own thoughts. When they finally reached home, Isaiah helped Prudence down from the wagon and then just held her, his hand splayed across her still flat belly. "There is a baby in there," he said wonderingly. "Our baby." "Our baby," she confirmed. "Are you really happy, Isaiah?" I know we did not plan this so soon. Plans change. This is the best surprise I could have imagined. You are giving me a family, Prudence. A real family." She kissed him, pouring her love and relief into it. "We are going to be good parents. We are, I promise you that." The news of the pregnancy changed everything, and nothing all at once. Prudence insisted on continuing her work, though Isaiah hovered anxiously whenever she did anything remotely strenuous. They argued about it more than once. "I am pregnant, not made of glass," she told him after he tried to stop her from carrying a basket of vegetables. "Women have been working through pregnancies since the beginning of time. But you were so sick when you arrived. I worry about you overexerting yourself." "Isaiah, I love that you care, but you have to trust me to know my own limits. If I feel tired, I will rest. But I cannot just sit around for 7 months doing nothing. I will go mad." They compromised. Prudence continued her work, but agreed to accept help from Isaiah and to rest when she needed it. As autumn arrived again, marking a full year since Prudence's arrival, her belly began to round noticeably. She glowed with health and happiness, and Isaiah fell more in love with her every day. They spent the long winter evenings preparing for the baby. Prudence sewed tiny clothes while Isaiah built a cradle from smooth pine. They argued good-naturedly about names, each suggesting options and rejecting the other's ideas with exaggerated horror. "If it is a boy, we could name him after your uncle," Prudence suggested, "since he left you the ranch. His name was Cornelius. We are not naming our son Cornelius. It is a distinguished name. It is a terrible name. No son of mine is going to spend his childhood being called Corny." Prudence dissolved into giggles. "All right, fine. What about something simple? John, maybe, or William. Those are good, solid names, and if it is a girl, I like Margaret or Elizabeth. What about Josephine? We could call her Josie." Prudence considered this. "I like that. Josephine is lovely." They settled on William for a boy and Josephine for a girl, though they both secretly hoped for a boy first, then a girl. Or maybe the other way around. Really, they just wanted a healthy baby. Winter was milder than the previous year, which was a relief. As Prudence grew larger, moving became more difficult. By February, she was ready to be done with pregnancy. "I am enormous," she complained, trying and failing to see her own feet. "I am a whale, a beached whale." "You are beautiful," Isaiah said, kissing her forehead. "And our son or daughter is going to be here soon." "Not soon enough. I want to meet this baby, and I want to be able to bend over again." The pain started on a cold morning in early March. Prudence woke Isaiah before dawn, her face tense. "It is time," she said simply. Isaiah's heart jumped into his throat. "Are you sure? The pain started an hour ago. They are getting closer together." He was out of bed in an instant, pulling on clothes and boots. "I am going to get Martha Garrett and Doc Brennan. You stay here and rest." "I am not going anywhere," she said wryly. Isaiah rode like the devil was chasing him, reaching the Garrett ranch just as the sun was rising. He pounded on their door until Thomas opened it, bleary-eyed and annoyed. "What in blazes?" "It is Prudence. The baby is coming. I need Martha." Martha appeared behind her husband, already pulling on a shawl. "I will be ready in 5 minutes. Go get the doctor. We will meet you at your place." Isaiah rode on to town, found Doc Brennan just finishing his morning coffee, and practically dragged the older man to his buggy. By the time they all converged at the ranch, Prudence's pains were coming hard and fast. "Out," Martha ordered, shooing Isaiah from the bedroom. "This is no place for a man. We will call you when the baby is here. But Prudence will be fine. I have done this 4 times myself and helped with a dozen other births. Go pace somewhere else." Isaiah found himself banished to the main room with Thomas, who had come along to provide moral support. The sounds from the bedroom were terrifying. Prudence's cries of pain cutting through him like knives. "This is normal?" he asked Thomas desperately. "Unfortunately, yes. Childbirth is not easy, but she is strong, and Martha and the doc know what they are doing. All we can do is wait." The waiting was torture. Hours passed with agonizing slowness. Finally, as the sun was setting, Isaiah heard a new sound, the thin, outraged wail of a newborn baby. He was on his feet instantly, his heart pounding. The bedroom door opened and Martha emerged, smiling and tired. "You have a son," she said. "A healthy baby boy, and your wife is fine, just exhausted. Come meet your son, Papa." Isaiah entered the bedroom on shaky legs. Prudence was propped up against the pillows, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her face drawn with exhaustion. But she was smiling, and in her arms was a tiny bundle. "Isaiah," she said softly, "come meet William." He crossed to the bed and looked down at his son for the first time. The baby was red and wrinkled and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. Isaiah felt tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by the reality of this small person he and Prudence had created. "He is perfect," Isaiah whispered. "You did so well, Prudence. You were so strong." "I had good motivation," she said, looking down at their son with wonder. "Do you want to hold him?" With Martha's careful instruction, Isaiah took his son in his arms. The baby was so light, so fragile, and Isaiah had never been more terrified or more in love in his life. "Hello, William," he said. "I am your father. And I promise you right now that I will do everything in my power to give you a good life, to keep you safe, to teach you to be a good man. You are the luckiest boy in the world because you have the best mother anyone could ask for." Prudence was crying now too, reaching out to touch Isaiah's hand where it cradled the baby. "We are a family." "We are," Isaiah agreed. "A real family." The first months with a baby were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. William was a healthy, hungry baby who demanded attention at all hours. Isaiah marveled at how naturally Prudence took to motherhood, even as he stumbled through learning to change napkins and soothe a crying infant. One night, when William was about 2 months old, Isaiah woke to find Prudence sitting in the rocking chair he had made, nursing the baby by lamplight. Her face was soft with love and fatigue, and Isaiah's heart clenched with emotion. "I can take him when you are done," Isaiah offered quietly. "You should sleep." "In a moment. I like this time when it is just the two of us and the world is quiet. Sometimes I still cannot believe this is real, that we have this beautiful baby, that you are my husband. A year and a half ago, I was alone in Philadelphia, wondering what my future held. And now I have everything I ever wanted." Isaiah got out of bed and knelt beside the chair, wrapping his arms around both Prudence and William. "I feel the same way. When you stepped off that stagecoach, sick and weak, I had no idea that you would change my entire life. You gave me purpose, Prudence. You gave me love and partnership and now a family. I was just existing before you came. Now I am truly living." "We are both living," she said, leaning her head against his. "And we are going to build an amazing life for our son, for any other children we might have. This ranch is going to thrive, and our family is going to be happy and strong." "I believe that," Isaiah said. "With you by my side, I believe we can do anything." As the seasons turned and William grew from a baby into a curious toddler, Isaiah and Prudence worked together to make the ranch prosper. Prudence's goat cheese became famous in the region, and they were able to buy more land and expand the cattle herd. Isaiah's skill with horses earned him a solid reputation, and he had more work than he could handle breaking Mustangs for buyers across Utah Territory. When William was 2 years old, Prudence found herself pregnant again. This time, Isaiah was prepared, though no less excited. Their daughter was born on a warm September evening, and they named her Josephine as they had planned. 2 children, Prudence said, holding Josie while William examined his new sister with grave interest. We are truly blessed. We are, Isaiah agreed. He sat on the bed beside his wife, with his son pressed against his side and his daughter cradled in Prudence's arms. You know, I still think about that day you arrived. How scared I was, how certain I was that I was going to lose you before I ever really had you. But you did not lose me. You saved me, Isaiah. You gave me a reason to fight, a reason to get better. You saved me too in a different way. I was lost before you came, just going through the motions. You gave me something to work for, someone to love. You gave my life meaning. Prudence shifted Josie to one arm so she could reach out and cup Isaiah's face. We saved each other. That is what love does. It makes us whole. The years that followed were full of hard work, joy, and the usual challenges that came with raising a family and running a ranch. William grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved working with the animals. Josie was her mother's daughter, with a stubborn streak and a love of growing things. They were eventually joined by another brother, Thomas, and then years later by a surprise baby sister named Margaret. Through it all, Isaiah and Prudence's love deepened and matured. They had arguments and disagreements, as all couples do, but they faced them together. They supported each other through droughts and harsh winters, through cattle sickness and market fluctuations. They celebrated victories and comforted each other through losses. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaiah took Prudence back to the same spot where they had watched the sunset the night after she first started to recover from pneumonia. The children were with Martha Garrett for the evening, giving them rare time alone. You remember sitting here that first time? Isaiah asked, his arm around her shoulders. Of course. I was still so weak, but I felt safe for the first time since leaving Philadelphia. I felt like I had found where I belonged. You belonged with me. You always belonged with me, from the moment I read your first letter. Prudence turned in his arms to face him. Do you ever regret it? Answering my letter, bringing me here sight unseen, taking on a sick woman who could have died? Never. Not for a single moment. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Prudence Randall. You and our children, this life we built together. I was incomplete before you, and you made me whole. I feel the same way. I thought I was coming here to find a new start, to escape being alone. But what I found was so much more. I found love, real love. I found a partner and a purpose. I found home. They sat together as the sun set in a blaze of gold and crimson, painting the mountains in shades of fire. The ranch spread out below them, the house they had expanded together, the barns and corrals, the gardens that Prudence tended with such care. It was not a grand estate or a wealthy property, but it was theirs, built with sweat and love and determination. Tell me something, Isaiah said. If you could go back and do it all over again, knowing everything that would happen, the hard journey, the pneumonia, the struggles and challenges, would you still get on that stage, Coach? Prudence did not hesitate. In a heartbeat. Every moment of suffering was worth it to end up here with you. I would do it all again, 1,000 times over. Isaiah kissed her as the last light faded from the sky, and in that kiss was all the love and gratitude and wonder of 2 people who had found each other against all odds. 20 years after Prudence first arrived in Monticello, sick and weak and uncertain, Isaiah stood on that same porch and watched his grown children work the ranch. William, now a capable young man of 22, was breaking a particularly stubborn Mustang in the corral. Josie, married now and living just a few miles away, had come over to help her mother with the cheese making. Thomas was mending fence, and young Margaret, 14 and full of fire, was helping her father with the cattle. Prudence emerged from the house, gray threading through her chestnut hair now, but still beautiful. She slipped her hand into Isaiah's, and they stood together watching the fruits of their labor. "We did well, did we not?" Prudence said softly. "Better than well. We built something real, something that will last. Our children are good people, strong and capable. The ranch is thriving. And I still love you more than I did yesterday, though not as much as I will tomorrow." Prudence laughed, the sound as warm and wonderful as it had been 20 years before. "That is terribly sappy, Mr. Randall." "I am a terribly sappy man when it comes to you, Mrs. Randall." They had been blessed beyond measure, and they knew it. Their love had grown from letters and hope into something solid and enduring, tested by hardship and strengthened by shared joy. The ranch that had once been a lonely place for a solitary man was now a home filled with love and laughter and purpose. Isaiah pulled Prudence close, breathing in the familiar scent of her, feeling the solid warmth of her against him. She had arrived sick and weak, a stranger from a distant city, and he had nursed her back to health. In doing so, he had found his purpose, his reason for being. She had not just become his wife, she had become his partner, his best friend, his everything. "I love you," he said, "not for the first time and certainly not for the last." "I love you too," she replied. "Today, tomorrow, and always." As the sun set over the mountains of Monticello, Utah, painting the sky in familiar shades of gold and crimson, Isaiah Randall held his wife close and knew that he was exactly where he was meant to be, with exactly the person he was meant to be with. They had built a life together from hope and determination and love, and it was more than either of them had ever dared to dream. Their story had begun with an advertisement and a desperate journey, but it had become something beautiful, something lasting, something true. They had found each other, saved each other, and loved each other through everything life had thrown at them. And they would continue to do so for all the days they had left, together on the ranch they had built, in the home they had made, surrounded by the family they had created. It was more than enough. It was everything,